Vanessa had another nightmare where she was falling off a cable car. There was a shaky cabin with a broken mount behind her, and she was falling, horrified, waiting for her imminent death. Just before the surface, the nightmare ended, as usual, and the girl woke up in a sticky sweat with a lump of fear in her throat. Would these nightmares torment her for the rest of her life? The first nightmare had occurred 2 months ago, on the third day after her parents' funeral. At that time, it seemed that she had already overcome the worst horror after the call from the mountaineering camp, where they traveled to fulfill their dream of vacationing in the mountains together. Why had she grown up? While she was a child, her parents kept postponing the cherished trip, thinking that it was better to go on vacation to the sea with their daughter. And so, when Vanessa turned 18, they happily packed their suitcases and went to a mountain resort, as in their student days. The unfortunate cable car broke down just when they decided to look at the long-awaited beauty from above. Or maybe the wise Granny Sophia, who lived next door, was right, comforting Vanessa at the funeral. Don't cry, darling. God takes the soul at the right moment, when the soul is purest. So it was better for them, together, and with joy in their hearts. In this world, they had only been together for a few decades, but in the other world, they would be together for eternity. Apparently, it was time for them to go to eternity. You better pray for them. Tears won't help much. Your prayer will help them there. Vanessa prayed as best she could, but the nightmare didn't go away, repeating with monstrous precision from time to time. It was already sunrise outside the window. Vanessa got up. Yeah, I'd better start getting ready for college. Lying in bed won't help. It'll only make it worse. The old wooden floor creaked beneath her feet. There will definitely be no renovations in the near future. Dad and Mom were going to start it when they got back from their vacation. Now the girl will have to use this money to survive and pay for college. She could work part-time, but would she have enough energy? Maybe it's better to switch to a correspondence department right away. However, the quality of education there was not so good. Vanessa got up, looked out the window with tired eyes, and went to make tea. She had to talk to the college chancellor today. It was time to enter adulthood since it had started so suddenly. The next few weeks, the girl was busy transferring to the correspondence department, getting assignments, and looking for a suitable job. In college, everyone tried to help the girl in distress. They quickly transferred her to a correspondence department without any problems. But it wasn't that easy to find a job. They didn't want to hire her without education and work experience, or the job itself wasn't right for the young and inexperienced girl. At one of the companies, the boss immediately started undressing her with his eyes. Frankly speaking, Vanessa wasn't ready for such difficulties. She thought that young enthusiastic people would always be able to easily find a good job, but the reality was much harsher than she expected. On one of those unlucky days, having failed an interview for another vacant office secretary position, Vanessa wandered aimlessly down the street. She didn't want to go home. The old house missed her parents as much as she missed them. Suddenly, her attention was attracted by a restaurant window, where a little toy man in a turban was sitting cross-legged and shaking his head as if he had come out of a fairy tale. The girl was still almost like a child. She froze, looking at the sophisticated doll, which distracted her from sad thoughts. The doll nodded confidently, hiding a slight smile in his mustache as if he wanted to say, "Don't be sad, dear. Everything in life comes to an end, and your sadness will also come to an end." After standing there for a while and calming down a bit, Vanessa was about to move on, but her gaze, sliding down the porch steps, caught on a leather wallet. Apparently, some customer had lost it. At first, she was hesitant, remembering the stories about crooks who robbed gullible passers-by using this simple trick. But then the sense of responsibility prevailed, and eager to help the hapless owner of this wallet, the girl picked it up and pushed the restaurant door open. "Good afternoon. I found this on the porch. Maybe the owner will come back for his loss," she addressed the guy behind the bar. "I didn't check. Maybe there's an ID inside." The young man looked at the visitor in surprise and opened the wallet. There was a good amount of money, a bank card, and a few business cards. The bartender looked at the bank card, saw the owner's name stamped on it, and smiled. You have the opportunity to give the wallet back to its owner yourself. It's the wallet of the restaurant owner. His office is upstairs. The owner was a dark-haired elderly man with graying temples. When he saw his wallet, he was surprised and checked his pockets in bewilderment. What a miracle! I didn't even have time to realize that I had lost my wallet, and it had already come back to me. Moreover, in the hands of such a beautiful girl. I must do something to thank you for your honesty. Tell me, do you need anything? His voice sounded so compassionate that Vanessa, who had been in desperate need of parental support lately, suddenly burst into tears and told her sad story to this stranger with a kind smile and the look of a man who had been through a lot in life. I guess fate brought you to me, the restaurant owner said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Your parents died, and my daughter left home. I'll give you a job with a decent salary. Right now, there's only a dishwasher vacancy in the restaurant. But life doesn't stand still. Start with this position, and then maybe another position will be available. I guarantee you my protection. If anyone offends you, come straight to me. Accept it, it's a good offer. Not believing her luck, Vanessa wiped her tears and nodded happily instead of answering. Great. My name is Roberto. As you have already understood, I am the owner of this place. The team is great here. I don't tolerate bad people. The customers are different, but most of them are nice people. I think you'll like it here. Come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. It's not the most prestigious job, but it's a good start. Don't worry, I'm used to working in the kitchen. We often had guests at home. It's not something new to me to wash tons of dishes, she smiled. Vanessa walked along the evening promenade, and the warm wind ruffled her loose hair. She had been working for Roberto for over a year now. He didn't lie, his team turned out to be really great people, friendly, reliable, compassionate. Vanessa did her best, and they responded with friendliness and support. She had already graduated from college, but she didn't want to leave the restaurant. Moreover, Roberto raised her salary, so she could start renovating her old house. The smooth flow of peaceful thoughts was interrupted by a strange sound. It was coming from the left side, and in the fading twilight, it was not clear who was making that squeaky sound. Looking more closely, Vanessa realized that the squeak was coming from a bundle in the arms of a young woman standing 2 meters away from Vanessa, staring intently into the dark water beneath the bridge. The woman's posture indicated so much tension and despair that Vanessa was frightened, sensing something bad, but didn't move for fear of triggering the stranger. However, the woman noticed Vanessa, turning her gaze away from the water. Her eyes were as empty as the eyes of a person who had already crossed the line of extreme suffering, crying and screaming. No! Vanessa wanted to shout. No! Don't do that! You can't give up! But it was too late. The baby in the woman's arms turned from a weak squeak to a desperate cry, as if sensing the danger of the situation. The young mother flinched and recoiled from the bridge railing, and Vanessa finally grabbed her by the shoulders. What the hell are you doing? How can you do this? You're so young, and you have a baby. The words flowed out incoherently. Vanessa had absolutely no idea what to say to a person in such a situation. I don't know. My milk is gone. I have nothing to feed my baby, no place to live and no money. I have nothing. Why would I live like this? The young woman started to cry, and Vanessa's heart relaxed a little. If she's crying, it means she's coming out of her stupor. She should act quickly, but what can she do right now? The right solution came instantly. There was an envelope in Vanessa's purse with the salary and bonuses Roberto had given her that day. Actually, Vanessa was not supposed to get a bonus, but in response to her perplexed look, Roberto frowned slightly, hiding a smile, and said, "Take it. It's for the occasion of your graduation. Would I congratulate my daughter? You would. And your father would have congratulated you too. So take it, it's a gift." But this girl needed such a gift, much more. And Vanessa, grabbing the woman by the arm, said in a voice that did not tolerate objections, "We're going to the supermarket now. There we'll buy some food for you and the baby. Don't try to refuse." But the woman had no intention of refusing. She was just standing there, looking at Vanessa incredulously and wrapping the baby in her old sweater. Finally, the young mother moved and they went to the nearest grocery store. The baby was quiet as if anticipating the upcoming meal. The bonus was just enough to buy everything: baby formula, bottle, pacifier, fruit and vegetable purees, diapers, and some food for the exhausted mother. But they had to prepare the formula, and it was not right to change the baby's clothes outside because it was too cold. So Vanessa decided to take the happy young mother home. While cooking dinner and feeding the 6-month-old Alex, the girls started talking. The stranger introduced herself as Rebecca and told her trivial but painful story of beautiful love, which was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected pregnancy. All the feelings immediately cooled down, and declarations of eternal love evaporated. The result of the story was that the father of the baby had paid the rent a year in advance and disappeared without a trace, leaving no new phone number. And 3 months after his escape, Alex was born. A week ago, the rent period ended, and they had to leave the room. In her native village, her parents' house had been occupied by her older brother, and her relationship with him was hopelessly ruined long ago. Wandering around the city did not bring any results, and, if not for the unexpected miracle in the form of Vanessa with her help, the end of this story could have been tragic. How do that scoundrel live with it now? It's a real betrayal to leave the woman who carries your baby under her heart. Doesn't he have nightmares at night? Vanessa became indignant. She was still very young, and she didn't understand a lot of adult things. "He's always had a good night's sleep," Rebecca replied sadly, gently rocking Alex blissfully asleep after a hearty feed. Vanessa couldn't sleep all night, trying to find a way out of the situation, but she couldn't come up with any suitable option. Alex could end up in an orphanage due to his mom's homelessness. So in the morning, before leaving for work, she left the keys for Rebecca and told her to stay at her place for now. On the way to the restaurant, Vanessa's thoughts switched to Roberto. He protects her so much he must be missing his daughter. The girl didn't know the details of this sad story, but people said that Roberto didn't like his daughter's fiancé, and she ran away from her parents' house with her beloved, disconnecting her phone and leaving no address. According to rumors, at first, Roberto was furious and didn't even try to find his daughter, who in his opinion, disgraced the honor of the family. However, the years went by. There was no news from the lost daughter, and the father, overcoming his arrogance, finally started looking for her. However, the search was unsuccessful. Who knows, maybe right now she also has no home and no relatives, just like Rebecca. A thought flashed in Vanessa's mind. The working day flew by quickly, and in the evening, the girl hurried to the supermarket again to please her unexpected guests. Having unpacked the bags, Rebecca only splashed her hands and began to deftly set the table. When everyone was seated at the table, she rubbed her hands, uttered a catchy saying, and began to eat the contents of her plate with gusto. Interesting saying. "Where did you hear that?" Vanessa asked, catching Rebecca's wild appetite. "My late friend used to say that," Rebecca replied. "She used to repeat it every time she sat down to the table. So I got used to it. Now I'm saying it in her memory." Vanessa had another sleepless night. But this time, she was focused on arithmetic. Shopping at the grocery store twice made her realize she couldn't afford to feed all 3 of them. There was no way to save money on groceries, as Alex had strict dietary requirements. No matter what, the baby still needed expensive formula, but he also already needed dairy products and some diet meat. He is not the one to blame for all the adult problems, and therefore, he should not suffer. "I need to ask Roberto for permission to take home leftovers after banquets." Vanessa found the only suitable solution. Leftovers were a real delicacy for many restaurant workers. People always ordered more food than they could eat, so there was often a lot of untouched food left on the tables. According to the rules of the restaurant business, which Roberto always followed, all this food had to be thrown away along with the unfinished food on the plates. But no one dared to throw away fresh and tasty food, so the restaurant staff was allowed to take it home. So far, Vanessa had been too shy to take that food, believing that she was paid well enough to survive. But now the situation has changed. Now she was responsible not only for herself. Now she has to live according to all the rules of this cruel world. The big banquet was scheduled for the following week. Vanessa hesitated to ask Roberto about it for a long time. But at the very last moment, when she couldn't wait any longer, she said, "Roberto, I have never asked for anything like that. But now there are some circumstances. Anyway, can I take the leftovers from the banquet today too? I really need it." The man raised his left eyebrow slightly. "Sure, you can take it. Did you get a pet?" Vanessa looked embarrassed. "No, I don't have any pets yet. But I have to help people. You know, any food is good for a hungry person." For some reason, Roberto turned very pale, swayed, and, trying to hide his nervousness in vain, asked, "Wait, where did you hear that saying? I got a roommate, and she always repeats it before dinner. She has a baby but has no job, no money, and no place to live. It so happened that they had nowhere else to go. My paycheck isn't enough for 3 people. That's why I asked for leftovers. You can take as much food as needed for her. The Almighty blesses helping the poor," Roberto said reflectively and hurried to hide behind the door of his office. There, Roberto took a bottle of water out of the refrigerator and emptied it almost in one gulp. Swallowing greedily the prickly water, he feverishly tried to understand where the unknown Vanessa's roommate could learn the saying of his best friend Alexander, who had been burned to death in the flames of the fallen helicopter. In memory of his friend, he had brought the saying from the war and used it only at home, before dinner. His wife Nina died long ago, so the only people who knew that saying were Robert and Carol. He thought about his daughter, gritted his teeth, and suddenly splashed the rest of the water in his face. Is Carol back? An intrusive thought was drilling into his brain. Or is it just a coincidence? Or maybe it's just a woman who used to know Carol. For the first time in so many years, he had hope. He couldn't miss it, no matter what. Roberto paced nervously around the office. He was overwhelmed by conflicting feelings, the timid joy of hope, the cold fear that the hope might be futile, and the burning impatience to go and find everything out. What if it was not Carol? Or, if it was his daughter, how would she meet him? And what would he even say to her? The only thing was clear. He had to clear up the situation, and he couldn't wait till tomorrow. He should not go there without Vanessa. He might spook her and mess everything up. So Roberto must wait until the banquet is over. It seemed that time had never dragged so slowly. The restless, cheerful guests didn't want to leave the restaurant. They didn't need a host or karaoke. They were successfully entertaining themselves. Any other time Roberto would have been glad the banquet was a success, but now it was torture. Finally, at midnight, the people began to leave. One more hour and the tired staff would also go home. Desperately afraid that Vanessa would go home without him, Roberto went downstairs, got into his car, and waited, relentlessly watching everyone leaving the restaurant. The old pain that had escaped from the deepest corners of his memory was now tormenting him with renewed vigor. Why had he been so harsh then? Yes, his daughter had chosen a terrible fiancé. Such arrogant and lazy guys are not suitable for a family. But he could avoid making hasty decisions. He could come up with some workaround. Oh, if only Nina were alive, she would have found a way out of the situation. She even knew how to calm down her straightforward and fiery husband. Now, he was a completely different person. Now he was broken. His beloved wife had a hard time with him. But she never raged, never shouted, never said a single harsh word. If only Carol had been like Nina. But she was like her father, straightforward, fiery, and impulsive. Immersed in his memories, Roberto didn't notice that Vanessa had already left. He realized it when her frail silhouette began to fade into the thickening darkness. Trying not to make any abrupt movements, the worried father started the car and slowly followed the girl. Vanessa's house was not far from the restaurant. Roberto waited for her to enter the house with the bags, hesitated for a couple of seconds, but then pulled himself together, got out of the car, and followed her. He resolutely opened the gate and stepped into the courtyard. But something was wrong. Vanessa had thrown the bags on the ground and was sitting on the porch. Her shaking shoulders left no doubt that the girl was crying. "Vanessa, what happened? Are you all right? Why are you crying out here on the porch?" The hoarse, agitated voice indicated Roberto's confusion, but the girl didn't care about that right now. They're gone. Both mother and baby. And they were leaving in a hurry. The baby's stuff was scattered all over the floor, and she left the keys on the table. I have no idea what could have happened. Maybe they were afraid of someone. We can't figure anything out on the porch. Roberto pulled himself together. Let's go inside and try to figure out what's going on. But when they entered the house, they still couldn't understand anything. A few hastily dropped baby rompers, an open pack of diapers, and a bottle of formula. The man bent down to pick up the fallen items and suddenly noticed a photo on the floor. A sharp pain pierced his heart, and he felt a traitorous weakness in his legs. Young Roberto was looking at him from the photo, embracing Nina. It was the best picture from their wedding, and it had disappeared from the bookshelf on the day when Carol ran away. There could be no doubt. It was her, after all these years. But where could he find her now? For what sins did he suffer these fatal circumstances? He had just found his daughter and lost her again. His disobedient, trembling fingers frantically flipped through the list of contacts. Maybe some friends had sheltered her because she was afraid to go home with the baby. Silly girl. Even if she had 10 children, he'd be happy to have her back. But who would she go to? There weren't many family friends, especially after all these years. The feverish search was interrupted by a woman's business-like voice. A neighbor had entered the house. "Vanessa, I apologize for disturbing you in the middle of the night. But there's no reason to worry. Why are you crying like it's the doomsday tomorrow? The baby had a fever and vomiting. The doctors didn't diagnose anything dangerous, but decided to take them to the central hospital just in case. You know, the baby can't tell you what else could be wrong. Your guest didn't have her own phone, so she came to me, and I immediately called an ambulance." Without listening to the neighbor any longer, Roberto ran to the car. Vanessa, toppling the bags left on the porch, rushed after him. The car raced along the empty night highway. The feverish excitement didn't let go of Roberto. Is that really true? The long-awaited meeting seemed unreal to him. He had waited too long, and he was too tired to hope. The nurse in the emergency room had surrendered almost without a fight. It was really impossible to stop the father, who almost reached his goal. When Roberto got the floor and room number, he rushed up the stairs with the speed of a young boy, jumping over the stairs. Vanessa, panting, tried to keep up, but it was difficult for her. Finally, he reached the right door. It was a miracle he didn't break the doorknob with his strong hands. A woman was lying on the bed, looking at the window. A baby was sleeping nearby, in a crib. "Carol, darling." A voice full of hope and pain cut through the hospital silence. The woman turned around and tried to recognize those who had entered. Roberto's breath caught and his legs shook treacherously, forcing him to grab a nearby chair. "You're not Carol." He gulped the heavy air with his mouth. "Where's Carol? Where's my girl?" "Yes, I'm not Carol," Rebecca replied quietly. "Carol was my best friend." "Was? Why was?" Roberto's voice showed his extreme tension. "You must be Roberto Carol's father. Then take a seat. It's a long story. We met 5 years ago, shortly after Carol and Eduardo had run away from home. Eduardo had his own apartment in our city. I lived in the same building, on the same floor. Carol and I instantly became friends. She was cheerful, life-loving, and daring. I always lacked these qualities in my life. And next to her, these qualities came from nowhere. We could talk for hours. She understood me even without words, and I understood her too. When she and Eduardo quarreled, she would come to me. This guy couldn't get used to adult family life. He could earn some money and waste it all at parties with his friends in just a couple of nights. He used to say that the money should easily come and easily go. Carol would get angry, and he would fall on his knees in front of her and shower her with compliments. Of course, she instantly forgave them, unable to resist the charms of the heartbreaker. Still, she realized they couldn't live like this forever. Soon they began to quarrel much more often. Carol had a tough nature, and she never gave up on her opinions. Eduardo would yell and go to his friends, and Carol would come to me. She regretted running away from home, but her pride wouldn't let her go back. She kept telling me about you and her late mother, about your strong and happy family. Then Eduardo planned something. He could not earn as much as he wasted. One day he told Carol he was going on some business trip, packed his suitcase and left. But I didn't believe him. He often talked to some woman on the phone, and judging by the fragments of conversations, it seemed to me that this woman was very rich. Apparently, he went to that woman. She had money, and Eduardo knew how to organize a happy life full of fun. It was probably the only thing he could do professionally. After he left, Carol realized that she was pregnant, but she couldn't even tell him about it. He didn't mention where he was going, and he didn't answer calls and messages. Carol realized he had abandoned her, but she did not leave the city, hoping that he would come back. But he never came back. Eduardo still doesn't know that he has a son. By the way, Carol named her son after some of your friends. She said you were in the army together, went through the war, and were best friends. After Alex was born, she finally decided to go home. But fate had different plans. There was a fire in our building. The wiring should have been replaced long ago. But as always, they delayed until the last minute. So, a fire broke out. I was at work, and when I came home, I saw black smoke coming out of our windows. I ran upstairs to see what was going on, but I couldn't even get into the apartment. Everything was on fire. Carol and some other people died. Severe burns and carbon monoxide poisoning. But little Alex was saved. Apparently, when the fire started, Carol rolled the stroller with him out onto the balcony and put some stuff in it. I think she went back to take something else, but she never came out again. The firemen found Alex on the balcony in his stroller, and Carol was found on the doorstep of her apartment. She was already dead. I found your photo among the stuff that was in the stroller. Carol tried to save it as one of the most precious possessions. I temporarily moved to another apartment, and the ambulance took Alex to the hospital for examination. The custody authorities refused to give him to me. I had no husband, no apartment, and no job. I tried to find your address, but it was not a quick job. Alex was not doing well in the orphanage. He lost weight, refused to eat, and cried all the time. One day I took him for a walk, hugged him, and suddenly he started crying loudly. I pulled up his sleeves and saw bruises. Apparently, he had disturbed someone with his crying. I realized that they were beating him there, and he was afraid to go back. I got furious and lost control of myself. I didn't realize that I was breaking the law or that I had no money. I just ran to the highway, stopped the truck, and the driver took me to your city. I just didn't know how to find you. The orphanage must have already reported the kidnapping to the police, so I couldn't even go to the police or use social media to find you. My anger cooled down. My faith in my own strength shattered, and I wandered around the streets, hungry and helpless, not knowing what to do. My apartment had burned down. I had stolen the baby, and I had no money, even to buy some food. That day on the bridge where Vanessa found me, I was in total despair. But the Lord saved me from sin. That's how I ended up at Vanessa's. afraid even to tell her the truth about myself. And you already know the rest. There was a heavy, deep silence. Roberto was sitting on the chair with his hands clasping his head, swaying from side to side. It would be better if he were screaming and sobbing, Vanessa thought, trembling with nervous tension. She herself had already drenched her handkerchief with tears and was trying not to clatter her teeth so as not to make the situation even worse. Rebecca was desperately silent. It was hard to say how much longer they would sit like this. But the long pause was interrupted by a hungry Alex, who loudly announced his presence by crying. Rebecca turned to the baby, and Roberto finally straightened up. Vanessa was shocked. It seemed to her that in those few minutes, he became 10 years older. Deep, mournful wrinkles appeared on his face, hiding streams of tears from everyone around him. But still, he was a very strong man. Waiting until Alex had calmed down, he put the chair back and said, "Rebecca, don't be afraid of anything. You gave me my grandson back, and now my house is your house. You can live there as long as you want. I'll take care of any legal problems. My connections are good enough. You can come straight to my house from the hospital. I'll take your stuff from Vanessa myself." Rebecca didn't have time to say anything. Afraid of losing control of his emotions, Roberto said to Vanessa in a hoarse voice, "I'll wait in the car," and quickly left the room. Vanessa waved goodbye to Rebecca and followed him. 4 people were standing by the grave. A short gray-haired man, a girl, and a young woman with a baby in her arms. A dark-eyed smiling girl with rebellious curls above her high forehead looked at them from the shiny black surface of the monument. "Well, at least we finally met, darling," Roberto said, placing a bunch of burgundy roses on the grave. "Forgive your stupid and arrogant father. You can hear me, I know you can. She forgave you long ago, Roberto." Rebecca touched the man's elbow. "Carol never said anything bad about you, only good things." "That's good," he said. "People need to be forgiven, the sooner the better. Unfortunately, I was too late to realize this simple thing. Vanessa," Roberto turned to the girl, "Rebecca and I are going to stay here for a couple more days. Please come back home. The restaurant can't be left without supervision." "Without you?" Vanessa asked fearfully. "What are you afraid of? You're the administrator now. You need to get used to it. I need to spend time with my grandson, so I won't be able to be at the restaurant as often as before." With these words, Roberto took Alex in his arms, who snuggled up to him right away, and they slowly wandered towards the exit from the cemetery into a new phase of such a complicated and sometimes completely unpredictable life.